Howdy, my name is Derek Henry, and I created the XLEV8 Add-in Suite a few years ago, and in this video you're going to find out why. We're going to do a quick demo. Now, what is this that we're talking about here? Well, it's a suite of add-ins in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. Now, Excel is the center point. It's got most of the weight and really most of the things that you're going to do. 99% of the time, this is what's going to save a ton of time and then some. But a lot of things in there were useful in Word and PowerPoint, so I made those as well. Now, the idea is to save a lot of time, but there are other benefits as well, right? And when we're talking about time, we're talking about two types of time. One is through a lot of little shortcuts are going to save bits of time that add up very, very quickly. And then the other is in bulk things that are very repetitive, so it'll loop through and do them a lot quicker than you or I ever could on our own manually. But there are more benefits to software like this than just saving time. We want to reduce errors. When you and I do something manually, a small mistake can have a big impact, right? Especially if it then is the beginning of a process. One of the things that happened to me in college when I first learned how Excel worked, the very first exposure I ever had to it, I got a 10 out of 100 on a project because I made a mistake at some point in the very early part of the project, one of the first references, and then it just exponentiated, had a ripple effect, right? That can happen in the real world too if you're not careful. And when you can automate things and you can have safe guardrails in which to play and have controls around them, it makes a big impact. And lastly, when you have software, it gives you options to do things that you might not otherwise have thought of. So some examples here are really making professional formatting, doing some valuable analysis that might have been tougher otherwise, and in really keeping things organized so that you can be very consistent and deliberate in what you do. Now we're going to do a quick demonstration and just kind of a walkthrough of what's going on here. So in Excel, that's where we're going to focus our time. When you install this, it's going to add a tab to your ribbon. Okay, it says XLEV8 at the top, and it's organized by different categories that make sense. And then within those, each of them are going to have different macros that you can run. Now, when there are keyboard shortcuts assigned, you can just run them, and it's going to show you in brackets what those keyboard shortcuts are. Now, as pretty as this UI is, that's not the idea to use it over and over again. The idea is to leverage keyboard shortcuts. So as an example, one of the very common things people do is highlight colors, right? Or other formatting types like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use what we call a toggle. Now I'm pressing Control-Y for the default shortcut, and notice how it's going to toggle through several different colors. Now the defaults are yellow, orange, red, purple, and green, and then back to nothing, but you can choose whatever colors you want. Now whatever cells are highlighted, even if they're not contiguous, it's going to apply that formatting. Right? And if you want to change those, that's fine. Now, if you didn't know what that shortcut was, or if you wanted to change it, or if you have something where there's not a shortcut assigned yet, there is something that we created called the search macro box. Now, when you run this, it's Control-Shift-W by default. It's going to give you a search box where you can use anything, right? So you can run this same one we just did. Toggle cell format, cell highlight. There we go, right there. Does the same thing, right? So in here, you can set shortcuts and then set them over and over again. You can set favorites, and then the filter will just look through the favorites, or it'll look through everything. It's going to show you the description. And so if you just press the arrow keys, and it's just like searching on Google, it's going to show you the shortcut, where it's at, when it was added, a lot of other helpful data points. And then down below, it's going to show you the help URL to where you can go to learn how to use it, maybe even a quick video if that applies. Lastly, you can also include any workbook macros that you have in your active file. So if you have a few macros that are in that particular workbook and it's just a little more frustrating to use them, check that box there, then part of the searching. Now, as another example, there's several toggles like this, 15 of them or so. Number formats, another really common example. So this one's got general applied, then we can add a comma, then we can add a $sign, percentage with 1 decimal, dates, because dates are just numbers stored as a certain value, and then text, and then back to nothing. Again, you get to set those 5 favorite formats that it will toggle through. So if you have a couple that you really like, makes it a lot easier than clicking up here, clicking itty bitty little arrows like for the colors or for the number formats. It's like having several different steps in one, and then you have several different options from there to do it. Now another example, these are toggles, is pickers. What is a picker? Well, first we're going to start with a sheet action picker. Now in this one, the default shortcut is Control-Shift-S. Now what it's going to do when you run it, it's going to prompt you with a series of actions, a lot like a menu that you might run in native Excel. Only here, you get to set your default over and over again. Notice you can just click the box here, and it will even highlight it for you, whatever that is. So in here, it's F, so jump to first sheet. So all we have to do is press enter when whatever we want to run is there, jumps to the first sheet. You run it again, Option J here lets you jump to any sheet and file. So if we wanted to jump to one like that one, or we want to jump to one like this, subfolders, or anything really, notice it's going to show us options on the sheets as we type. It's going to tell you whether it's visible or not and what the tab color is if you've got a different color. Now, again, it's a lot like searching on Google. It just makes it very quick to navigate a really big file. So you could use that. You could also use Option T, create a table of contents. Now what this is going to do is it's going to ask you what cell you want to link to, and it's going to create a table of contents within the file as the very first sheet. And each of these are sheets that you can link to. So run Control Shift H, and it will jump to that sheet. And then Control Shift S to show the sheet picker again. Default option is S. You can get to the table of contents or anywhere else in the file very, very quickly. Any of the tabs, if they have colors to them, it will highlight them with colors. It will hide the ones that are hidden, just so it's not cluttering things up. It's going to mirror the way that you've set up your file. There are several other options on here to move tabs, to insert them, to rename them, to copy them, to go back and forth if you're going to be doing that. A whole lot of options here. And again, you can set your default over and over again to make it easy. Another example is the filter picker. Now in this one, there are a lot of filter options that are going to make life easier. This is Control Shift F by default. Now in here, there are a lot of options like adding the filter in the first place and freezing panes. I've already done that one behind the scenes here. You can apply save filter values. So let's say you open a file or report up and you filter this column and then this column and this column, and maybe you do that for 3 or 4. Then you might sort 1 or 2 of them, and you might change the column widths a little bit. That guy, Option D, is going to save all of that. You're going to get 5 of them that you can name whatever you want and apply it very, very quickly, all in one step, right? Now let's say you wanted to filter to a specific value, like everything that says copy, right? Well, then we would run that shortcut. Option T is going to filter to selected values, right? And everything's been filtered. Now, if you want to unfilter everything, I've got the default as U because that's the most common thing I run. Just run Option U. Or again, many of these others, filtering in and out blanks or errors, or based on the fill color of the active cell, or sorting it, or inserting slicers. If you've never used slicers, those are really cool. It's a visual representation of what you filtered on. And then even with numbers, you might want to filter out the numbers like it says down here, greater than, equal than, etc. on dates or numbers. And then one other one that I think is really helpful is both the previous and the next value, right? P and N. It's going to jump to the next one in the list as if you were coming up here in alphabetical order. So if you had a list of store numbers or alphabetical values you're going through, if we filtered to colors and we ran that, it would go to comments and content, or the other way, it would go from content to comments to colors. So the idea is we're making things easier, and we're keeping our hands off the mouse because it's a little tougher and takes longer to use the mouse than it does keyboard shortcuts. So a lot of options here on filters. One other one I use all the time personally is the print picker. This is Control Shift P as a default. Now this is going to let you do things like set margins and orientation, a lot of other print settings very quickly, but the real value here is to apply things across multiple sheets, which is not something you can do in Excel by default, and also set some favorites. So we're going to use P, that's the default here for Show Print Preview. Notice how it's not very sexy, right? It's got a whole bunch of cutoffs and things, and if we were to print this, we'd waste a lot of paper. Now, let's say that we have lots of sheets we're going to apply the same printing settings on, and we want to go to, let's make it like 1 by 1. Let's print a wide landscape, something like normally people would want to do. So you run this, it will apply that to any sheets you have selected. So this could be for 1, could work on hundreds. And if we show the preview again, notice it's nice and neat, right? So it's a lot more like people would want to see it. Now, there are dozens of pickers in here for formatting, for navigation, for just common actions that people like to do. So keep that in mind. There's probably one for something you want to do. One other option for kind of shortcut-based macro is searching recent files. Now, Control Shift O is the default for this. And what it's going to do is every single time you save or open a file, it's going to log it in the background so that it makes it searchable. You can restrict it to just be a certain number of months. 2 years is the default. That seems to be about right for me. And just type in a couple letters. Look at this. We can open a file very quickly. Right? And this is the one that's going to help you set this up. Now, what people tell me is they spend a lot of time looking for files. McKinsey found that the average person in an office setting, like most people are that are probably watching this video, spend almost a quarter of their working time looking for information, looking for Excel files or emails or searching the web for things, right? We're trying to make it that easy. So you're going to be able to do this in Excel, but also Word and PowerPoint. So that gets us through all of the shortcut-based macros. So we talked about all these things that just doing these a few times a day or many, many, many times a day, that adds up really quick. Did you know that just an hour a week adds up to 6 months of your life if you live to be 68 years old? Sorry, 86 years old. That's really quick, right? That's a lot of time. Just little things add up very quickly. Now let's talk about how we can help with bulk things. A lot of people have told me, they're like, I need to unpivot a table. Right? Well, you ever had to do that before? So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this table and instead of it being wide, we want to stack it horizontal. So we just select our data here. We're going to run the search box because this isn't one I have a shortcut assigned to. We're going to pick Unpivot Table. What it's going to do is prompt you for how many rows above the data set. Okay, so the data is below these headers of actual and budget and period names. And then how many columns are to the left of the data, right? The account description. So again, that's 2. And what it's going to do is it's literally going to unpivot that. Right? It does it pretty quickly. Usually takes 5 seconds, maybe 10, depending on how many rows and columns that you've got of data. And literally will create that in a file called, or a sheet called data output. So what you'd want to do is label these. So actual versus budget, period, and amount. But see what it did here? Right? It got all that data. Now it's stackable. Now we can do all kinds of formulas with it, and it just becomes easier to use. You know, create a table off of that, etc. That's a great one I use quite a bit. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Excel can do some pretty cool stuff. We could create folders. We could create files. We could take files and add them together or split them apart. Do the same thing with sheets. There are a lot of things you can do in bulk with Excel. Some you kind of have to be careful with. So let's pretend we want to add a whole bunch of folders. As a former accountant and controller and did stuff like that, financial reporting, we had to have all kinds of folders driving where things were at. So I had to do this one quite a bit. Now this is going to do the same thing that a lot of macros in here are going to do when you want to apply bulk settings. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run one called create shortcuts. I'm sorry, create subfolders. Create shortcuts is another one. So what this is going to do is it's going to add a sheet, very much like the one we were just on, called create underscore subfolders. Okay, so what it does, this is called a settings sheet. So what you're going to do is fill this in. It gives you instructions here off to the right of every one of these. It says what to do, right? So we're going to fill that in. I've already done that for us, so you don't have to watch me do that. But the idea is you're using formulas and references and all kinds of things to speed it up and reuse it. That's a key, is reusing it, right? So we're going to put this right here. Now, before I run this, I want to show you this folder right here. Notice it has no subfolders. Okay, when we run this, okay, so we ran it, it did not find the sheet it was looking for. Now we've got that, we filled it in. So we're going to run it again, and it will try to process it. Okay. Now, in most of these, it will highlight green things it's done that were successful. Okay, so that'll take a few seconds. It's toward the end, tells you how many it ran. You know, consider saving a copy if you've done a lot of work and got a lot of formulas built out for this. And now, these are all in here, right? So there's a folder, a weekly folder for every one of these, 212 of them. Pretty cool, right? That'd take a lot of time to build out yourself. You want to build it out for many years in the future? Go for it. So we talked about this one. Now run browser steps. This one's relatively new. This is something that, again, most people don't realize Excel can do some really cool stuff. What this one's doing, now I've already pre-filled this in, I've already run it, so it's created that settings sheet. So at this point, you get the concept of that. Most of these bulk task ones are going to create the sheet, you fill it out, you do whatever the instructions say, you run it again, and it will actually do the thing. That's what's already happened here, is we've already filled it out. Now what this is saying is it will follow these instructions and control a browser. Okay? Now this one takes a couple more steps to set up, but it's worth it. I use this almost every single day. because I do software demos for a living at the time of this video was made, and I like to make things look nice and specific and similar to the way that I use this software as a former user. So there are about 800 clicks that I do to move things around and restructure things that not other people do, and I got tired of doing it manually. So I built this. I taught it all the steps to do, and it runs them in about 12 or 13 minutes every day. So I get up, I run this, it's done by the time I've brushed my teeth and gotten dressed, and I didn't have to do it. It does it 2 or 3 times faster than I could do it even myself, right? That's the power of this. So if you're running a lot of reports, the same report, different settings, change the store, change the location, whatever, or the cost center or something, or if you have to do something really repetitive, that's where this works best, right? Where it's the exact same steps over and over again. Even if you just do it once every month or quarter, that's the best part, because then you don't have to remember what you did. Just write it all down like this. That's where this really helps, okay? So let's run this and see what happens. Now we're going to run them out. One of my former colleagues said, I call this the bro macro because you type BRO and there you go. That's the only thing that's left there. So we're going to run this. It prompts you because you want to make sure that this is what you want to do. And literally, it's going to pull up a web browser. It's connected to Excel. Now this is in Chrome. Right now we're using Chrome. There are other options. I'm going to pull this up here so you can see it. Notice I'm not touching anything. Things are being clicked. I'm holding my hands up so you can prove that out. But it's going to click the right things. And in this example, we're going to fill out a form. So you see how there's Bob Jones. Bob's a plumber. He wants to request a feature. He's going to enter something. Now, another thing this is going to do, you go back into Excel, you can build in pauses. They can be a certain number of seconds, or a -1 is going to pause so that you can either enter a password or review something before it submits. The intention there is you want to stop everything to take action. Now, so we're going to fill that in, right? That took 1 minute. It'll tell you how long it took to run and how many actions and how many were skipped, right? But just think about how powerful that is, right? So we've got this over here. Don't need that anymore, so I'm going to close it. There's so many things that people do really, really repetitively. Let it do it for you, right? So we ran that one. Now the next one's actually going to touch PowerPoint itself. So to run this one, okay, we're going to talk about how you can refresh a ton of PowerPoint content in one swoop, just looping through without having to do it manually. And the things that really are a pain in PowerPoint are getting the sizing and the positioning of things just right and the right things in right places. It's a pain, right? That's why I built this, because I got tired of doing it. Now I'm going to have to take this out of presenter mode to run it. But what this is going to do, when you run this, again, it's a settings sheet macro. It's going to create this sheet right here where you get to say, where is the file that should be updated? What sheet is going to have all of the details, the data, the things that need to be updated and point to an Excel file of some sort. In this case, I put it in this demo file here, but it could be any file will open up for you, right? And we're just mapping that. So we got to have these data points, the slide name, the source type, etc. So those are all listed on here and we've mapped them. See, here's an example, but here's where these all map on this sheet. So I've filled this in, right? Now what it's going to do is it's going to find that and it's going to literally update that PowerPoint slide, the PowerPoint file that we were just looking at, right? So when we run this, actually, let me show the before state. So here's the before state. Now notice I'm going to click to the next one. See how it says slide 6 down here. I'm going to go backwards. Okay, here's slide 5. All right, we want to update this. So what we're going to do is run the refresh PowerPoint slides macro. It's going to loop through all these things. It's going to copy and paste either images or ranges from the Excel file. It's going to tell us how many it did. And then watch this. Without doing anything else, here's the before, okay, just so you can see the difference. Here's the after. Notice it copied and pasted the month, right? Here's month 9, whereas before it was blank, right? So month 9, everything's in the exact same place as it should be, right? It's just updating the things that should be updated. Charts, tables, labels that have dates in them, anything that should have changed is what you'd want to list out right here in this list, and then it's going to update it for you. Right, so here's what the charts look like that we wanted to copy from. Now, some people want to link this from PowerPoint and Excel. I've had bad experiences with that. Either things get out of sync between the Excel file and the PowerPoint file, or the PowerPoint file becomes so big because of all this underlying data that it's almost unusable. It just takes forever to click through. What I found is that this works really well. And what it enabled us to do after I built it was we could refresh a PowerPoint presentation of 150 slides in like 8 minutes. Now before, we'd never even tried to update it because you have to kind of get to some point and say, look, the data is what it is. We're just going to make this PowerPoint file because we got to present this to, management, right? Now we were able to actually do some analysis and say, you know what, we found a couple things need to change, and so we change them. That's what you can do when you have the power of technology in play. Now, if we go back into here and we go back to our list of all the things we're tracking, so we talked about this one, and now we got a couple of cool Outlook things. Now, in this one, full disclosure, these are screenshots because I wanted to make sure to capture exactly what was going on, and you know how things in Outlook can change. So, just so you don't have to wait on this to run, I'm going to show you what we're talking about here. Now, the first one is called Bulk Edit Appointments. Notice in this screenshot I took of my email account that there's nothing in the calendar. Okay? That's what we're going to change in bulk, but we're going to use Excel. So when you run the Bulk Edit Appointments macro, again, I would probably use the search box, it's going to create the settings sheet here. It'll be blank. It'll just have the headers here. It won't have anything else. You get to fill that in. Why would you use Excel to do this? Well, Excel itself is extremely useful as a list tool. It's great for filtering and sorting and all that and printing and analysis, but it's also great for referencing and building things in logic. It's a lot like programming. So if you have a formula here, you might reference that first one, or you might reference it and add 7, or you might do some math on it or whatever. And most of these things, you can build if statements and all kinds of logic. So one of the things I use this exact macro for with my kids who have a lot of extracurricular activities and things going on. School's about to start. In fact, when I'm making this recording, it's actually starting tomorrow. And I need to put time in to drop them off and pick them up and get them to activities and just block things off like major events and things. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I started doing this, and we're like, this is a lot of stuff. It takes a lot of time to do that. So I built this, and I was able to put it in Excel and build if statements and all kinds of cool formulas around it so that we could get like 500 appointments and import into Outlook very, very quickly. Now, most people would not do that if they had 500 to do one at a time. It just takes too long. The cool thing was I put that logic in place knowing that, guess what? The kids are going to be in a different grade next year. Let's reuse that. And it worked really, really well. So this is what we're going to see. We're going to run this, okay? And after you run it, it says added, and it has the identifier behind it. So your appointments import directly into Outlook in seconds. In this case, it was less than a second because there was only about 11 of them. So what does that look like? Here's all the things we want to add, including the categories, the show time as, and all the different fields that you would want to edit in your appointments. Now, if you wanted to make changes, you could do that in bulk. You could also delete them in bulk. I found a few mistakes in those 500 where we wanted to change a category or we wanted to change the starting time. And some of y'all make me thinking, well, what about a recurring appointment? Yeah, but then you got to go through and edit the holidays, and it might change a little bit when there's an early dismissal, or ooh, the location might be different. Like high schools, where we're at, have A day, B day, it switches. I needed something more than the recurrence because it couldn't really handle all that. But I could build a logic in Excel. So let's say, this was just for a demo. We're going to delete this stuff. Right? So we do that. It deletes in seconds as well, or updates, or whatever it is you're trying to do. You're back to where you were. This one's really cool. You can do the same thing with tasks in Outlook. You can do the same thing with contacts. You can update and do in bulk your categories or your folders in your email. Just all kinds of things that integrate with Outlook really, really well. Now, the last one we're going to look at today, some people have said, why would you even do that? And then they understand when I show them how it works. This next one is going to file email messages. That's right, we're going to use Excel to file email messages. Why would you do that? Well, it keeps everything organized. You ever met somebody who said, well, I've got about 15,000 unread emails? I look at them and go, how do you do your job if you're not reading your email or filing it or deleting or doing something, right? How do you ever find anything, right? There's some pretty good search functionality in Outlook, but if you keep them really, really organized and it's not much effort to do that, it's even easier. Because you might not remember who it was from or when or what it really was, but if you have it attached to a client or a project or something, it does make it a lot easier. Now, I work with all kinds of different companies. I've done hundreds of demos at this point, easily 500, 600. And I probably have that many folders in my email. And I try to, every time we have a new one, I add a new folder because I want to keep everything organized. So the more that you have of those and the more emails that you have, the tougher it is to get everything, right? The longer it takes for every single one of those to drag and drop. Enter this macro. So what this is going to do, let's see what the email inbox looks like before. Notice there are 93 items down there. That's all what's in the inbox, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to run the file email messages macro. And the first time you run this, it's going to create a couple of sheets. It's going to create the rules sheet. It's going to create your folders, right? So a list of all the folders you have as well as the categories you have, and then the email filing sheet. Okay. Now on the rules, this is a place where you can set some preset rules, a lot like you'd set a rule in Outlook. So if I get an email from this domain, I want it to go to this folder, or this sender to this folder, or the subject contains a recipient or attachments or all kinds of stuff, right? The common things we would use to drive logic around where it should go. Okay, so these are some defaults. That'll take care of stuff that you always know the answer to already, right? But you're going to get a lot of emails where you don't know the answer and you don't want to run a rule for everything, right? So this will take care of some. The rest is going to be based on a similarity index, and you'll see that in a moment. There's some other options like ignoring folders with common words that you're like, it's just suggesting things that don't make sense. So you could ignore some things, or even the subfolders below them. You can do some things to look for emails you get a lot, like update emails and things, so you can leverage those to append to the subject line to further increase the suggestion rate. You can even ignore flagged ones, because a lot of times people use that to indicate things that they're still doing. Okay, so what it will do on the email filing sheet is list out all the emails in your inbox. And again, why would anybody use Excel to do this? Because it's a great list and you can do things very quickly, like copy and paste, or filter, or macros like this one. So when you first run this, it's going to use those preset rules, and it's also going to look for a similarity between the subject of the email and the folders that you have. It'll look through every folder that you have underneath your inbox. Like in this case, the word training was here in training, right? The rest of these, it was just based on the from, or it was based on the domain or something else. Now remember, you can also have the flagged emails ignored. Notice that there's no suggestion for any of those flagged emails because we want to keep working on those. That's a setting you can change, right? Now, if you need to change things, sometimes it's a pain to do that. You don't want to misspell anything. So there's a drop-down list right here that is going to be linked to the folders you have in your email, so you don't spell it wrong. Sometimes, like me, you got 500 or 600 of those. I don't want to have to look through this giant list. That's just as bad as having to drag and drop them. So you can show a search list. Just press Control, Alt, and the down arrow, and it will let you search through the validation list behind the cell that you selected. So in this case, I selected this one, ran the shortcut, started typing, and well, it could have been either travel or training. And just like with all these other search boxes you've seen, just use the arrows to pick the right one. Right? So once we run that, we're going to run the file email messages again after we have reviewed those suggestions. That's the key reason I don't use Outlook rules, because it just does it without you seeing it. It will show you what it did. It'll highlight it in green. Now in the inbox, notice we're down to 5. We had 4 suggestions and 1 we left blank, right? It's a pretty clean inbox, isn't it? This runs in seconds. This macro right here saves me 3 hours every single week because I like to keep things nice and tidy. So I just, I'm looking at email as it comes in or throughout the day, and then I do this once or twice a week. Just I know where things are, and it suggests them really well. We have the client name in there. We have a folder that matches that. It does a really good job of suggesting things. Pretty cool, right? Now, how do you install this thing? How do you get a license? Okay, just go to the XLEV8.co website. There's no M here, common mistake, so just .co. And then look for the XLEV8 add-in. It'll be under the apps menu on the front of the web page. You can get a license there. It will give you a link to download a zip file. When you do that, extract it and open the Open Me First file, named intentionally, right? Follow the instructions in there and save a lot of time. You'll also see some cheat sheets and some video guides. You're using just like here. Just realize that this is just a tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of other macros in here. These are just great examples of the things I use all the time. And it adds up real quick. So thanks. Comment away on this. Share with your friends. Thanks for your time. And good luck. And get ready to save a lot of time.